hut-to-hut hiking in the Dolomites. How fun is it to talk about what really can be the thrill of a lifetime for people, to walk among the world's most beautiful mountains and to stay overnight in cozy alpine accommodations. It's really an adventurous thrill. So today I want to talk about how to arrange hut-to-hut hiking, when to go, how to get to the Dolomites, where within the range are good places for beginners, intermediates, and advanced trekkers to go, and just kind of what to bring and what to expect when you do this, because the Dolomites are very different than other regions around the world. Because they're famous for views like this. The Dolomites are these ancient seabeds that have been gifted to us by plate tectonics, and the geology here differs from the rest of the Alps in that these mountains form large massifs with sheer vertical cliffs and thin, dramatic rock spires. So they're not the highest mountains in the world, but they are, in my opinion, the most beautiful. And then what makes the Dolomites so special beyond just their dramatic beauty is that they're accessible. So the Dolomites have been settled for millennia, and humans have been trekking across the range, establishing routes and roads, paths, and migration routes for both people and animals. And so there is this incredible network of walking paths that connect villages, pastures, valleys, mountain passes, and peaks. And so today they're a destination for sort of health-conscious European, mostly vacationers who are generally German, Italian, and a few English speakers coming to just walk and be outside and get the good fresh air and to live and eat well. So the Dolomites are easy to get around. The signage here is everywhere. It's well set up, it's organized, and it makes it easy for people to feel confident to navigate their way around. Just a simple map. In places where there's internet access, of course, you can find your way around. And these signs everywhere are written in the two main languages that are spoken in this region, both German and Italian. So that's something to watch out for, as that can sometimes be confusing in trying to understand place names. And then there's this incredible network of 400 plus ski lifts and hiking lifts in the summertime that move people up to the higher elevations. And there are much bigger lifts that, gondolas and cable cars that lift people up into the high elevations of the Dolomites, like the cable car here at Lagazzoi, favorite place of mine. Talk about that a little bit later. And then way up high in the Alpine are these amazing huts that are mountain huts that are open in the summer for receiving hikers. Day hikers enjoy the bar and the restaurant. They get good food. They sit out on the deck and enjoy the views when the weather allows. When it doesn't allow, they're inside in cozy restaurant accommodations. The food is amazing. There's beer, of course. They're always stocked with water and supplies. They're spaced out every, it seems every 30 to 45 to 60 minutes along the path before you come to another hut. And so you're never far away from good food like we see here. Here's Trina enjoying strudel and a coffee on the right. And then on the left, those are the typical Tyrolean dumplings that you find in the Dolomites. Knaderli, and it's a potato dumpling served in broth, and this one is flavored with speck and mountain herbs. Absolutely delicious and exactly the right kind of food to be eating when you're hiking all day and moving your body and need to fuel up. So the huts, called rifugio in Italian. Rifugio is a mountain hut, and you might hear me say rifugi, which means a plural, multiple mountain huts. And so a rifugio often has accommodations for people to stay overnight, and they typically, traditionally, are sort of bunk room accommodations for people just to rent a bed. They typically have dormitory style rooms, shared bathroom down the hall, and the overnight accommodations allow people to to sleep at high altitude in relative comfort. And it's important to note that in most areas of the Dolomites, overnight camping, is actually not allowed. And it's not really the custom as well, just because there are over 1,000 of these huts scattered across the range that do such a great job of putting people up. So some of these refugio accommodations are getting upgraded and renovated, and we'll talk about that. Most have dormitory style rooms, but a few now are offering private rooms, which allows for even greater comfort. As you can imagine, back here in the dormitory, the snoring is an issue. Okay, so the magic, of course, of staying overnight in a refugio is watching the sun go down and the sun come up, and that famous alpenglow that illuminates that sunlight that illuminates the beautiful colors and hues of the Dolomites. It's the calcium and magnesium that give the Dolomite rock its typical kind of color, the sort of pinks and the purples and the orange hues that are different from, say, the rest of the Alps. So I want to talk about how to get there. Getting to the Dolomites is easy. It's amazingly easy, actually. So here's a map showing Venice in the lower right, and this is the route that you would take if you were to drive up to Cortina, which is the kind of center of the Italian side of the Dolomite Range. The Cortina is also going to host the Winter Olympics, along with the city of Milan, coming up in 2026. So there's lots of construction happening there as they're preparing for their second time being an Olympic host city. So there is really good bus connections from the Venice airport, as well as the downtown center of Venice. You've got every couple of hours, several times a day in the season, there are buses that run about 2.5 hours between Cortina and Venice. So very convenient to just fly into Venice, get on the Cortina Express. There's a couple of bus companies making that run, and it's super easy. And then to get to Bolzano, which is the sort of regional capital, you'd say, of the Alto Adige Trentino region in the western half of the Dolomites, it's easy to get there by train. You can drive, of course. The drive is about 3 hours if you have a rental car. If you want to take public transportation, you'd go by train, and it's about a 4-hour train ride with a connection in Verona to get up to Bolzano. So other ways to get there as well, you can fly into Innsbruck in Austria and then take about it's about a 3-hour train ride from Innsbruck down to Bolzano. It's another way to get into the Dolomites. You can even drive there from Munich. It's about a 4-hour drive, I believe, from Munich, Germany, which would be to the north. If you were to just drive from one side of the range to the other, say from Cortina, which is the end point of this route on the right, so in the eastern half, and if you were going to drive over to the Tyrolean German-speaking side of the Italian Dolomites to Bolzano, it's about an hour and a half drive or so, 2 hours if you go slow on the windy mountain roads, and then from Bolzano to Madonna di Campiglio, which is the center of the Brenta Dolomites, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. It's another 1.5 hour drive. So, from one side of the range to the other, it's about a 3-hour drive on mountain roads, just to give you a sense of the distances here. The bus connections are really good in the Dolomites, local buses. There's really an effort to try to cut down on the car traffic through the range. And one of the ways that the two regions that cover the Dolomites do that is they offer really good bus service, local bus service. So you've got buses between the villages, you've got buses to the major lift stations, and in some cases you have buses even going to popular trailheads. This is, though, the kind of thing that you really need to be careful about the seasonal bus schedules, because the hiking season runs more or less from June through mid-September. By mid-September, the services are starting to kind of dial down, so they don't run quite as frequently. And so same goes for the lift operating schedules. You need to be aware of that. All that information is generally found on the internet, though it can be a little bit of a challenge because of the two languages that are spoken here, again, in this bilingual region. Then staying overnight in the huts, just I want to kind of set expectations here, about what you can expect. Most huts you need to reserve in advance, especially if you're going to be hiking in, say, July and August. August is peak season. This is the month when Europeans go on their vacation. There's mass migration of Germans and Swiss and Austrians and Dutch and Scandinavians all coming down to the Dolomites for some warm weather hiking. And then, of course, the Dolomites are popular with Italians going north for some cool weather hiking in August to beat the heat. So it's a popular place. And August is one month where you really need to book ahead. And the popular refugio huts, you need to book ahead a fair amount of time in advance to guarantee a spot. And that creates a logistical challenge in that you have to kind of do your homework to plan out the route that you want to take. And it's kind of hard sometimes to judge, the difficulty of a hike. Are you, how much elevation? What are the trails like? What's the weather like? That can be a challenge. And so there are companies that offer kind of standard routes. We'll talk about that. Where you can buy a package where they kind of have pre-booked a bed in, the refugio huts that are along a certain route. They're easy to find on the internet. And sometimes that can be a good way to go. They're most often self-guided. So you're buying a package of, the accommodations. They often include half board. So half board means you get basically dinner. And sometimes breakfast is included, sometimes not. It'll depend on the place. But the huts, they're all well stocked with services. They're going to vary a little bit from place to place. Some of the huts are connected by mountain roads, and so it's easy for 4x4 vehicles to arrive and restock and resupply. Others are connected by lifts, and so supplies come that way. And yet others are far more remote and way up high at elevation, and so the services are more limited. And it's a good idea to know, what the basic services are at the huts that you're planning on staying at. Almost all of them have electricity and running water, of course. Some have Wi-Fi, some don't. Some can accept credit card payments, but many can't because they don't have good internet reception for the credit card readers. And so you have to carry cash here. And then for sleeping in the dormitory huts, one of the great thing about the huts is that you don't have to carry a lot of gear. You can actually travel much lighter. You don't need to bring a sleeping bag. You can just bring a simple liner. That's what European trekkers use in the Dolomites. They buy like a silk liner so that, you crawl inside of the liner and then you're not touching the linens. You can bring your own pillowcase if you like. And then I highly recommend bringing earplugs as well, and just getting used to earplugs because it's kind of a European thing to be sleeping in a dormitory style room with other people that you don't necessarily know. Now you're all sort of bonded by being part of the community on the trail, hiking to and from these huts, and so everybody There's a kind of camaraderie there, and it's fun. You meet people, you talk to them in the Refugio bar and the restaurant upstairs, and then everybody crashes down in the dormitory room. You can request an upper bunk or a lower bunk, depending on your needs. And yeah, just a good idea to ensure you get a good night's sleep, that you bring those earplugs. They usually have facilities down the hall, so bathrooms and showers. Sometimes you got to pay for the showers, a couple extra euros, because of the the water and the electricity to heat the water. But they all tend to have a sink or something. They're quite reasonable and quite comfortable. And here's some people checking into their dormitory here, getting their bags all ready, and then you'll also notice that the hiker here in the photograph is wearing not hiking shoes. You almost always are requested to take your hiking boots off when you enter into the Refugio. They have actually a little storage room and a shelf for you to put your hiking boots. And so bringing a pair of slippers or flip-flops or what have you, just for walking around, is a good idea. But you don't need to bring a full-size sleeping bag, and you certainly don't need to bring the typical kind of backpacking equipment that you might if you were backpacking through similar mountains in the US or North America or elsewhere in the world. So where to go? There are just endless options of beautiful places to go, and sort of like the advice in Venice of the sightseeing advice. Have you ever heard the people encouraging others to just get lost in Venice? One of the best ways you can enjoy that city. I don't encourage you to get lost in the Dolomites, but here you can almost kind of just pick anywhere, and it's going to be beautiful. You're going to be coming through charming villages. You'll be riding ski lifts up high, and the views are beautiful everywhere. So you almost can't go wrong. That's the point of comparison. I just wanted to point out the guidebooks here. These are the best guidebooks that I have found on the Dolomites, written by Gillian Price. It's the Cicerone series. They're written in English, and there are actually many different versions of hiking guides covering the Dolomites, so you can order those on Amazon. The one on the left is a really great series of day hikes. Many of those day hikes go to Refugio accommodations, so you can stop there for lunch or you can stay there overnight. It's a really good book if you're just sort of doing beginning hikes and you're not looking for a big long trek. The other two books are for the famous treks, the Alta Via, the high route, number one, and then number two. And these are kind of epic routes through the range that are multi-day treks that are popular and have good services along the way. And so these guidebooks cover those routes. I want to recommend just a couple of places for people starting out. If you're wanting to try this and you're just looking for kind of entry level accommodations and hikes to kind of link together, I want to recommend two places. This is the Alpi di Siusi area. It's a famous area in the western central Dolomites. It's convenient to get to from Bolzano. It's about a 45-minute drive. And I'm not sure you can see the details here, but it's, the Alpi di Siusi is this high mountain valley surrounded by the valley walls and some very dramatic peaks almost on all sides. And so the center of the Alpi di Siusi is the village of Campach. Campach is well served by ski lifts. And if you were here in the wintertime, you would recognize the terrain as being kind of a family-friendly ski area, basically. In the summer, of course, it's just beautiful pastures with dairy cows, feeding on the grasses, and it's very beautiful and picturesque, very green. There are some good hikes to the south. So south is here to the left of the image. And I just want to point out this hut right here is one of my favorites. So there's so many around in the area. This one is called Alpe di Tires, or Tierser, which is the German pronunciation I'm probably butchering despite my name and my heritage. I go with the Italian pronunciation. So it's called Tires, which is easy for me to remember because it's spelled Tires, like tires. But this is one of the best huts in the Alpe di Siusi area, I think, because it's been recently renovated. It's absolutely beautiful wood construction. And it's just on the backside of the valley wall here, looking south into these beautiful Catinaccio mountains here. And you can do a nice loop trail that goes up through the valley. You can ride the lifts if you want a shortcut, if they're open, depending on the time of year. And you go steeply up the valley wall, you cross over the ridge, and you come in here to Alpe di Tires hut. You can stay overnight. You can have a great lunch there. It's a beautiful view. But then there's this very dramatic walk along this ridge here out to another famous hut called the Schlernhaus. And the Schlernhaus refers to this rock spire that is here that is looking dramatic enough, but when you see it in person, it's absolutely breathtaking. It kind of marks the entry into the Alpe di Siusi. So the Schlernhaus is a great hike, and then it's steeply downhill or uphill, depending on which way you do this route. A couple thousand feet of elevation gain down into this valley, and then back to Kampach. This is just, this would be a very long day hike, but it would be a great chance to spend a night at the Alpe di Tires hut. There are other huts around. This is Molignon. This is a great refugio here. And then there are other huts that are never too far away in all directions here that you could string together if you were interested in doing a multi-day trek. Okay, then way over on the other side, on the Cortina side of the range, this is another kind of entry level area to hike and to stay overnight. Let's see, we've got Cortina is here. You can actually see the city marked in the upper left of the image. There's this valley coming up to Passo Falzarego. This is a place I go to on both my Dolomites tours. This is a famous World War I open air museum. And then about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way up the valley, there's this modern ski lift here called Cinque Torre, 5 towers. It refers to these 5 rock spires right here. They're too small to see, but they're quite dramatic when you see them. And there's this great hiking area up here with there's actually 4 great refugio huts that you can stay overnight. There's the Refugio Cinque Torre, which is right next to the towers I just mentioned. You can hike uphill to Refugio Avrao, another really well-known, popular hut that is well connected by ski lifts. And then you can continue on to Refugio Nuvolau, which is really one of the iconic refugio huts to visit way up high. The services are a little more limited there because you're really up high. The views are spectacular from that hut. And you can hike down to Refugio Ferrare and continue on to Passo Giao. This pass is connected by bus service back to Cortina, as is Passo Falzarego, connected to Cortina by bus service. So good place to start. Then I mentioned the Alte Vie high routes. These are the trekking routes through the range. We saw those guidebooks earlier referring to the Alta Via 1 and 2. There are actually 6 Alta Via trekking routes through the Dolomites that are well established, well signed, well supported with huts. Some are more adventurous than others. The first one, Alta Via 1, is by far the most popular. It goes from Lago Braias down to this little village La Pisa, and then there's bus connection to Belluno. And it takes in many famous places in the Dolomites. And then the second most popular one is this Alta Via 2. And then the others are far less popular and more wild and you see less people. So these are multi-day treks. So Alta Via 1 is about 7 to 9 days, depending on your speed. But for most people, 7 to 9 days. This is the kind of route where you can buy a package through guiding companies that will book basically all the refugio accommodations for you, and a lot of them will give you information via an app or something, and then you kind of self-guide your way along the route using the information from the company and the reservations at the huts. So this is a classic route. It is the mountain trails are for intermediate walkers. There is certainly a lot of up and down. So it's 75 miles over 7 to 9 days. So you're looking at 10 miles a day or so, less if you take more time, and then about 22,000 feet of elevation gain. So it's significant, and it's going to be a lot of up and down, and it's going to be very rewarding. This is the kind of thing you also want to buy ahead of time if you're going to go in August. I like to go in September. The European crowds tend to really fall off after the 1st of September. The weather's still great, and most huts are open through the middle of the month. So check this out if you're interested in a kind of iconic trek through the Dolomites. Very easy to set up, and you take in some of the highlights listed there. Then the Alta Via 2 is by far the more challenging one. This is a 9 to 13 day trek. So you're looking at 2 weeks of time to do the Alta Via. It's 115 miles, so it's quite far. 33,000 feet of elevation gain. This is a lot of up and down, a lot of challenging mountain paths, scree slopes. You've got some Via Ferrata sections to be aware of that you don't have on Alta Via 1. Here you've got these famous routes through kind of very vertical and somewhat sketchy terrain that are made safe by having iron railings essentially anchored into the mountain that prepared hikers will actually clip into for safety over a kind of exposed area. And so you've got some kind of beginning to intermediate Via Ferrata sections on the Alta Via 2. So this is definitely a more challenging route. And we'll talk more here about the Via Ferrata section. So Via Ferrata, Iron Way. So here on the left, there's an example of one of these steel cables that are anchored every 10 feet or so into the mountain, that allow people who bring a harness. It's just a simple sort of mountain harness, and you have 2 lanyards with 2 carabiners at the end of the lanyards connected to your harness. So this allows you to have 2 points of, 1 point of anchorage at all times, and at the transfer points around the anchors, you'll have 2 lanyards anchored to the cable. So that allows you to unclip one while you transfer the other over the anchor, if that makes sense. It's pretty self-explanatory, actually. Once you get there, you see it. And, it looks like this is some kind of advanced rock climbing. I promise you it's not. Everyday people do this all the time in the Dolomites. And it's something that you definitely need to be aware of what you're getting into. They kind of describe the Via Ferrata sections. There's a rating system, but you can usually get the tourist information people or the guys working the lift to tell you if it's a sort of easy, medium, or difficult Via Ferrata section that you are planning to go. And you'll definitely want to rent a hard hat and a harness and the lanyards. So it's a little bit of gear that you take with you to get past the sections where there's a little bit of exposure. I want to talk about the Brenta Dolomites in the western part of the range. So this is west of Bolzano, near the ski town of Madonna di Campiglio, beautiful little ski town. There you can get a start with the lift up into the mountains and then stay overnight at Rifugio Tuquet or Rifugio Alimonta, a little bit deeper into the Brenta Dolomites, and there's this famous area there called the Boquete, and these are kind of more intermediate to advanced Via Ferrata sections like this. So this is a famous ledge that you can see is a Via Ferrata because of the obvious exposure. It's very dramatic, but you can see over there on the right the steel cable that is anchored into the mountain, and then a hiker kind of moving along, clipped in. But it's a fairly wide path. It's a popular place, and lots of people do it. But you can imagine the thrill of that adventure, being in those dense Boquete mountains of the Brenta range is pretty spectacular. Here's another view of a climber that is kind of making his way along the ledge and around the corner, always clipped in for safety. All right. I want to talk a little bit about my tour coming up next year, the High Dolomites. I'm super excited about this. From September 10th to 19th, I've put together a route, an itinerary that I think is just super exciting. It's a combination of hut-to-hut hiking and hotel stays that are strategically sort of laid out across a route that is going to go from Bolzano to Cortina. So we go from one side of the range, start out in the German-speaking side of the range, with the kind of Austrian influence of the culture there, and we'll make our way across to the Italian side in Cortina, all using lifts and trails and a bus transfer at one point to make our way. So it will meet in Bolzano. We'll then make our way to the Alpe di Siusi. We'll have a hotel stay there just to kind of warm up. This is a 10-day tour, so we got a warm-up day in that beautiful alpine cow pasture that is the Alpe di Siusi. We'll make our way up to the Alpe di Tides, which I mentioned earlier, and then move through the Catinaccio range, or the Rosengarten, as it's called in German and labeled there on the map. Staying overnight at a very dramatic rifugio way up high. And then hiking down out of the Western Dolomites into the Val di Fossa, making our way using a series of ski lifts, actually, that will be open that time of year. I think we ride 4 ski lifts, kind of skipping our way across actually several miles of territory, I think, and then ending at Passo Pordoi for a couple of nights of hotel stay. So after staying a couple nights in refugio huts, then we stay a couple nights in a hotel. We shower up, refresh, do laundry, do a day hike, or just rest our legs a little bit before moving on to Passo Falzarego, which I mentioned earlier, and we'll spend a day doing the World War I open air museum at Lago Zoe, going through the incredible tunnels there, and then hiking our way along to the Tofana Massif, which is the huge, dramatic 10,000 foot plus elevation massif that overlooks Cortina. So we'll hike down into Cortina and spend a night there to end our tour. Super exciting. This is a tour for intermediate walkers. So, if you're comfortable doing upwards of about 4 hours of hike time per day, of course, we'll take our time. We'll enjoy lunch. We'll stop. We'll rest. We'll enjoy the views. So it's not a race. But the idea is that the hiking segments are about half day long. You can do more, certainly, as there are side hikes, detours that you can take to go climb further up. There are optional Via Ferrata routes that you can do with the extra time if you have the energy, but you can also just chill and hang out at the Rifugio on the terrace and enjoy and soak up the atmosphere. So the paths are, a lot, they vary from, routes like this, which is a kind of well-trodden path, to more mountainous trails that go, up through, rocky surfaces and things like that. There is one section of an entry-level Via Ferrata that we will do that does not require any harness or hardware or anything. It's just simply a cabled assisted section over some rocks that you just hold on to the cable to get across. So with everybody packing light, you'll be able to move freely. We'll pack light for our overnights in the huts, but we'll have baggage portage between our hotel stays. So that way you can bring a suitcase, but you'll have a day bag that you'll pack with your overnight things for a couple nights, and then you'll be reunited with your suitcase at the next hotel stay. So here is a beautiful photo of Refugio Tires, which I mentioned earlier. It sits right below those the beautiful backside of the Alpe di Siusi. You can see the terrain there. It's just spectacular. And then there's this just amazingly renovated Sotner Pass Refugio hut that we visit after Tides. So we'll hike up to this, and just the spectacular views from this rather interesting design of a new hut. This just opened last year, 2023. It took a couple of summers to renovate the hut. And there you can see it in the morning, sunrise coming up over the clouds, and that magical experience of just waking up in mountains like this. It can be done in the Dolomites. So I hope you'll consider coming with me on the tour. Next year, we're going to hit some of my favorites that I do on my Classic Dolomites tour as well. This is the World War I tunnel that the Italians excavated, that has been restored and opened for people to walk through. So that's a highlight for some people. There'll be optional via ferrata routes. This is a good example here of somebody who is choosing to do this. It's not required, but you have the opportunity to do plenty of these kinds of steel cable assisted routes up through dramatic terrain. Here's crossing a steel bridge that you don't want, looking down is quite the experience, but if you just look straight ahead, you get across and continue on. And then, here is just this jaw-dropping image that I just love of the Dolomites. And when you get up high, up 10,000 plus feet, and you have views like this, it's inspiring. It fills my soul for sure. And just, some of the most alive feeling moments of my life have come here in this range. So I hope to be able to share that with you all. If you want to come next September 10th through 19th, check it out on our website, guided-by.com/ in this case, High Dolomites.